calendar tutorial using React. We're going to use Next.js for this, but you can just use regular React if you like as well. We're going to be using this full calendar library right here in order to do this. And we're going to add drag and drop. It's going to be kind of a full service calendar here. So enough talk about this. Let's get right into it. So if we come over to the next docs here, you can see we can get started with a next application with npx create next app. So we'll just copy that over. And from there, we're going to open up a terminal here. We can cd into our desktop right here. And then from there, we can paste this in npx create next app at the latest. And we're going to name it. So we'll just call it calendar for now. Do we want Typescript? We'll go yes. ESLint, sure. Tailwind, yeah, we're going to style Tailwind here. Do we want a source directory? No, we don't need that. We'll use AppRouter, although we'll just do basically everything in one file to make this a little simpler. And do we want to customize anything with the defaults? Nope. And it'll go ahead and run this for us. All right, so once that's done, we can cd into that calendar like this. And then we're going to open this up in VS Code. All right, so this is what our blank project's going to look like in VS Code. You can see we got our Tailwind config here, and this is the app folder right now where we're going to do all of our work. So we're going to handle everything within this page basically, and then we'll use some styles maybe in this global CSS as well. Before we get too into anything right now, let's open up a terminal here because there's a couple other packages we want to add here. All right, so we want to add this calendar component library. So let's come back over to here for a sec. And this is the full calendar component library here. So we're going to add these here. We need full calendar core, React. We need the day grid and potentially some interaction one as well. So let's go ahead and add those. All right, so within this terminal, I'm going to go ahead and add these. All right, now we're going to come in and npm install a few different packages here. So we have the full calendar core here, full calendar day grid, full calendar interaction, which is going to help with click events and that sort of thing. Just the React full calendar time grid, which you may or may not use. And then a couple other non-calendar related ones like the headless UI React and hero icons React, which is just going to be an icon library. And this headless UI React is going to be for a modal that we're going to use for, I think, deleting and maybe adding an event. So let's go ahead and add these. And then once those are added, we can just come into our package.json here and just double check that all of these are added right there. So once you have that, we can kind of get started here. So let's just come in and run a server. So we'll just say npm run start here. Actually, it's npm run dev, not start. And we can click here on this localhost 3000. All right, so this is our basic Next.js app. So let's come back to the code. Everything's running fine. And let's begin to work with this. So I'm just going to close down this. All right, so we can get rid of this package.json for now. I don't think we'll need that anymore. Let's come into our page.tsx right here, and we can give ourselves a little more room. So we don't need basically any of this going on here. So let's get rid of, I think, everything inside of this. And we'll leave the main right there, but everything else we can get rid of. All right, so all we're left here is the styles we came with and this main tag right here. We can get rid of this next image as well. All right, so let's start by getting a little bit of text up on the screen, and then we'll also get maybe the calendar and see if we can just visualize this a little bit. So let's come in here. We're gonna have a nav above here. So this is a fragment here in React, and we're just gonna add that around the main to wrap our nav here. So we can say nav like this. And part of this nav, I'm going to add some classes onto this. So I'm not going to type out every single class because that'll just add a lot of time. That's not necessary. You can either copy them out yourself, or you can come into the GitHub repo and copy these styles if you want it. It's not going to be the prettiest app ever, but if you want these styles, you can do it. Otherwise, you don't actually need the styles for anything. Then next, we're going to have a H1 in here. And we're going to say calendar just as a kind of title there. And again, we'll add a class name here for that. So that'll add a little bit of styling. Let's just see if that looks like it's working. All right, we still have this dark themed here, so let's get rid of that. But you can see up top here, the calendar is showing. So if we come back in, get rid of this dark theme, we can go into the global CSS and get rid of kind of everything in here. And that will get rid of the dark theme for us. Then if we go back, now we're looking good. That is our kind of nav bar that we're working with. And then while we're at it in this global CSS, let's add a little bit of Tailwind here. So again, this will all be in the GitHub. I don't want to type it out because it'll be like a 6-hour tutorial if I do. But basically all of these classes here, these are part of the calendar app. So most of them start with .fc and then some sort of something else on there. So this is a view, different stuff. And this is the Tailwind syntax, this apply here. If you want to do it outside of the inline styles, like in a global style sheet, you just use this apply and then the same styles that you would use inline like that. And once we add the calendar, I'll show you in the browser these class names that we are hitting. All right, so let's get a calendar up and running here. So inside of this main right now, we're gonna have a div here and I'll add the styles there. And then inside of this div, we're gonna have another one here. All right, so that's our structure so far. And then inside of this is where we're gonna have this full calendar component. So we can come inside here and we can say full calendar. And then inside this, oh, for some reason that's not being brought in. So we wanna bring that in from full calendar React just up top right now. So make sure that gets brought in. I thought it would do it automatically, but not so apparently. All right, so then inside of this full calendar here, inside here, we're gonna add a few things. So the first thing we wanna do is add those various plugins. So in here, we're gonna have an array here. And then inside this array, we can add the various plugins. So we're gonna say day grid plugin, just like that. Then we're gonna have the interaction plugin there, and then the time grid. And it looks like none of those are being brought in either. I'm not sure why those aren't automatically being brought in, but we'll paste them in up top. And then within this interaction plugin, we're gonna be using this draggable and this drop arg, which is just a TypeScript thing. So we can bring those in. Next thing we're gonna add here is a header toolbar like this. And then again, this is going to be an object within an object right here. And we're gonna have a left, and that's gonna be next, previous, today. We're gonna have a center, and that's gonna be title there. And then right here, and we're gonna say resource, timeline, week, day grid, month here, and then time grid, week, like that. So that is going to be kind of our header toolbar, and you'll see these are basically going to be the buttons and stuff. The title is going to be right in the center, and you'll see that in 1 second here. Then below here are going to be the actual events. So for now, we'll just do an empty array like that, see if that lets us do it. That'll just be for now. So this will be all our events, which we'll keep in state in a second. Then let's add a few more options within here. So we're gonna have a now indicator. It's gonna be editable, droppable, which this needs to be true if you want to use drag and drop, selectable, and select mirror. So those options will all be there. And then we're gonna have a couple other things. Let's keep going here. So we'll say date click like this. And we're just gonna leave this empty for now. And then we're gonna add the drop right here. And we'll add that in a second as well. And then the event click. So when you click on an actual event, what do we want to happen? And we're gonna have to come in and fill all these out, of course. All right, so the other thing we want to add is right at the top of this file in here, we want this to be just a client component. So we're gonna say use client like this. Otherwise, everything's gonna be a server component right off the bat, and that won't work for this particular library. So we want to tell it that it is a use client, make sure it's a client component just like that. All right, and then yeah, for now let's just comment these out, otherwise they might cause us some issues there. So we'll comment that out, and we'll come back here and fill these out in a minute. So let's save this and then come back over and check it out. All right, so this is our very basic component right now. We're gonna look a little better in a minute, but we have our week view, our month view, obviously no events or anything. Today we can switch month and then hit today and come back. So this is basically what you're getting out of the box, and we'll come back and style this, make sure it is of better size and stuff in a minute. All right, so let's come in and add a few other things here. So below this div, what we're gonna have in here is a bunch of drag and drop events that you can drag onto the calendar that will kind of be pre-created for you. So if we come in here and can do a div here, and on this div we need a couple things. We're gonna need a ID, and that's gonna be how we're gonna know what we want to be dragging here. So we'll just say, and I'll say draggable L, which is draggable element there. And then we're gonna have a class name again here. Paste that in right there. Just a few little styles on that. Then in here, we can have an H1 again. All we're gonna say is drag event like this. And we can add those styles on there. And then what we're gonna do, I guess we'll write this in now. We'll create the events in a second. So we're gonna map over the different events, which we haven't created yet, but you'll see in a second. And inside here, we're gonna have a div. And this div's gonna have a few different properties here. So if we come into this div, we're gonna have the class name. And we're gonna have a title on here, so that will be event.title, and we'll have a key like this. So that'll be event.id. Okay, and then inside this div right here, we're just gonna show the title of the event. So we'll say event.title like that, and go ahead and save that. And I think we got some extra braces we do not need here, so we can get rid of one of those and one of those like that. There we go. All right, so let's go up and create a little bit of this event state at least, so we have something to show here. So the first thing is below all of this, we want to create an interface because this is going to be Typescript here. If you're just doing JavaScript, don't worry about this. And that's going to be an event, and it's going to have a title, which will be a string. It'll have a start time here, and that's going to be a date. We're also going to see it might be a string sometime. We'll see about that. And then we'll say all day is a potential property here, and that's going to be a Boolean. And then ID is going to be a number, just like this. And then we'll close that off. So that's going to be our interface and what our event's going to look like. Now let's come down below here and let's create some state here. Const events and set events. And that's going to be equal to use state, which we'll bring in, as you see up here, from React. And then we're just going to create an array of objects right here. So let's come in and add these in. So basically we have a title property here, an ID property, and we're just going to event 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get as creative as you want with that. Obviously I did not. Now, while we're creating this state, let's just come in and let's create the rest of the state that we're going to need for this. So we're also going to have a all events here and set all events. And that's going to be use state, and it's going to be an empty array. And we're going to add this interface here as well to that. Then we can go const, and we're going to have a modal that's going to pop up. So we'll just say show modal and set show modal. And that's going to be equal to, and that'll be equal to use state, and it'll start as false. And then we're going to have another modal, which will say show delete modal and set show delete modal. And again, that'll be false. And then we have to store the ID we want to delete before that. So we're going to say const, and we're going to say ID to delete like that, and set ID to delete. And then we're going to say that is going to be equal to, I believe we'll say null here. So that can either be a number or that could be also null potentially. And then the initial state will be null like that. Oh, we don't want to close this off here. So make sure that's good there. Then the final piece of state here is going to be a new event. So we're going to say const and we'll say new event and set new event. And that's again going to be the event. And then inside of here, we want a few different things. So we'll have the title, which will be an empty string to start. We're going to have the start and we'll just do an empty string for that all day, and that'll be false. And then the ID, which will start as just 0 and close that off. So this is all of our state that we need for this. So make sure you have that all set up. So now that we have a little bit of state set up, let's come back in here and we can add the events back in. So inside of these events here, we're going to say all events. All right, so we have that all events. Don't worry about the red squiggly yet. We'll come back and fill that in a sec. But let's check out what this looks like so far. All right, so now our calendar is looking a little bit better here. We have these drag events here. Obviously, I can't drag. I'm trying to drag right now, and I can't do anything. These click events aren't doing anything. So not functional, but looks a little bit better here. So let's come back over and continue on. All right, so let's get some of this functionality working here. So we can come up here and let's work on this actual drag and drop. So if we come down below here, right below our state, we can use the use effect hook here. So inside of this hook, we're gonna create a draggable element here that we're gonna get by ID here. So let's say draggable element, and it's gonna say document.getElement by ID. So if you look down, if you remember here, we had these draggable LID right here, and that's what we're going to be using for this within the use effect hook right here. So we're going to check to see if there's a draggable element right there. And if there is, we're going to create a new draggable like this. So this will create a new draggable element that we can manipulate here. And then we're going to add an item selector like this. And that item selector is going to be .fc-event here. So that's a full calendar class name right now that we want to drag. And if we come back over to our calendar here and we just inspect this. So we're going to be hitting the FC event, which is one of these. I won't find it right now. But this is basically what we're manipulating both with the CSS and then with this use effect hook right now. So we'll say events data like this, and that's going to be a function. And then we're going to pass in the event element there. And then we're going to get a few different things. So we want to get the title. So we're going to say let title. And that's going to say the event element dot get attribute. And then that attribute that we're getting there is going to be title like this. Then we want to get the ID as well. So that'll be equal to not data ID here, but data just like this. That'll be our actual ID right there. And then we're going to get the start here. Get attribute there. And then this is just going to be start, not data start like that. Okay, so we're going to get those three properties right there. And then out of that, we're going to return title, ID, and start just like that. And then we want to come in and close all of these off. Then make sure you close off all your braces. And then we're going to add this array here, which is going to be empty, which means it'll just run on the initial load like that. Okay, so that'll be our drag right there. So then if we come back to our component right here, we can come, now you see we have this drag ability and we can drop them right in here, which is pretty nice. Now, we can't do anything, we can't delete, we can't create anything, but we are able to drag and drop just with that kind of use effect. And that's just vanilla JS basically right there. So that is kind of nice. All right, so let's come in here and start filling in some of these here. So let's comment this out right now. So this is the date click, or comment it back in rather. And in here, let's create a function. It's going to be called handle date click, just like this. Okay, and we got to come and create that up top here. So come on up, and we'll go below this use effect right here. And we can just come and say, give ourselves a little room here. We'll say function, and we'll say handle a date click. And we're going to have argument here, and just add a little Typescript here. So it's going to be a date. It's going to say all day here that we're going to pass in, and that's going to be a Boolean. Okay, and then come on inside of this, and here we want to set the event. So let's say set new event. Event just like this. And then inside of this, and spreading the new event, so we'll say ... new event. And then we're going to say start, and that's going to be arg.date. And then we'll say all day, and that will be arg.allday. And then finally, we're going to create an ID here. Now, this is going to be a unique ID here. So we're just going to do this by going new date like this. And then we're going to say .getTime, which will get kind of a timestamp here, which should be unique right there. Now, this probably isn't the best way to do this. You might want to get a real ID in there, but that'll be, for our purposes, just fine. And then we're going to set show modal to true as well, and this will show the modal. All right, so that's the handle date click right now. Now, we don't have a modal component or anything, so we'll have to add that in a little bit. But let's come in and kind of finish off what we got in this calendar component for these other drop and clicks. So let's add both these back right now. We'll uncomment that. And then inside of this drop right here, we're going to have an inline function here. So we'll say data like this, and we're going to call add event. And then we're going to pass in data like that. So we'll create that in 1 second. But let's do this one at the same time while we're at it. So same thing, data like that. We'll say handle delete modal like this, and we'll pass in the data like that. Okay, so let's come in and create this add event and this handle delete modal. So come up again. We'll just go below this handle date click. And the first one we'll create here will be the add event. And inside of here, we'll have this data argument, and we're going to bring in a drop arg, and that is going to come from, I think we added that already, but from the full calendar interaction up there. Then we want to create the event. So let's say const event, and that's going to be equal to the spreading of the new event here. And then again, we're going to say start, and that will be data.date, and we're going to get to ISO. We're going to transform this here to 2.2 ISO string like that. And then next we're going to add a title here, and that's going to be data.the dragged L element here, and we're going to get the inner text off that. Just like that. Then I'll show you what all that's going to be, or where that's coming from in a second here. Then we're going to say all day, and that's going to be data.allday. And then finally, we're going to go ID, and that's going to again be the same thing where we create the ID up here. So new date.getTime, get that timestamp up there. And then finally below this here, we're going to say set all events. Like that. And then let's create a array right here, and we'll spread in all the events and then add the new event on top of that there. All right, so that's our add event right there. This data.dragged element is going to come from this data here, and it'll be the title of what we're passing in there. All right, so let's do this handle delete modal right here. So we'll just say up here and we'll say function. And again, we haven't created these modals yet, but we will in a minute. So we'll go handle delete modal. Same thing, pass in the data. Let's add a few types here. And then inside of this, we're going to say set show delete modal, and we'll set that to true. And then we will say set ID to delete. So this is what we want to delete. And we're just going to make sure this is a number here. And we'll say data.event.id. So this will just force this. If this is a string, it'll turn it into a number for us. All right, so go ahead and save that. All right, so if you come down, now we're good here. We handled that, and that is basically all we need to do for this calendar component. All right, now before we go ahead and finish this off with a couple modals, let's just make sure that this add event is working. So let's just console.log this, and what we'll say is data here, and then we'll just pass the data we want to log. So this is what we're gonna do, and then we'll come over to our app right here. So if we come over and add an event right here, you can see that the data is now logged and we get these various values that we're passing in. Now, I told you before, if we go back over, that this data.dragged element, and we're getting the inner text, which is going to set the title. So let's just take a look and see what we're working with there. So that's within this dragged element right here. Within this dragged element here, if we scroll down here, you can see we have this various attributes that we have access to. Computed name right here, and then we have this inner HTML and inner text right here. So we're using this inner text here to set the actual title on the event. So that is what we'll be using for that. So that looks like it's working good. Now, the last couple things are these modals, where we're going to be able to create a new event by clicking on an actual date, and as well we'll be able to delete an event. So let's get into those. So let's start with the delete. So let's come down below here, and we're going to be within our main but outside the last div right here. Give yourself a little bit of room here just to work with. And we're going to say transition here, and that's going to import it from headless React right there. And then we're going to say .root, and we have a show right here. And remember, created the state already for the show delete modal like that. So that's already been created state-wise. This is going to be a fragment here, so we can say as, and then we're going to pass in this React fragment. And that'll come from React right there. And then we can close this off. And then within here, we're going to have another thing called a dialog here. And this is all this headless React stuff here. So we're going to have a dialog, and that's going to be as a div. So it's just going to act as a div right there. It's going to have a class name here, and that is going to be equal to relative. We'll just write this one out, and it's going to have a z index of 10, so that's going to be on top of other things. And on close here, we're just going to pass in a set show delete modal. You don't have to set it to anything here. This is the component will handle that for you, so that's nice. And then within here, we're going to say transition child, and this is going to make the kind of transition ease in and out, which is going to be nice. So we'll just close that off. On top of here though, we're going to have a bunch of properties, so I'm just going to paste these in right here. So within this transition child, it's also going to be a fragment. You can play with these different values right now, but it's going to have a duration of 300, which will be 0.3 seconds right there, and the opacity is going to go from 0 to 100, and all these different values here. So you can play with those if you want to change that up a little bit. And then within this child, we're just going to have one more div like this, and just some more styles on top of that. So that's all that's going to be. So that's going to be one child right there. And then we're going to come down below this here, Oh, and by the way, a lot of these styles are just coming from the Tailwind UI stuff. So you can check that out. It is a paid thing, so don't worry about that, but they are just, the styles are coming from there in case you were interested. All right, so then we're gonna have a div here. Add some styles onto there. Inside that, we'll have another div, some more styles on that. And then inside this, again, we're gonna have another transition child, and we'll paste those again. Very similar here. You can play with those values if you like. All right, then inside here, this is where we're gonna have our dialog panels here. So I'm gonna say dialog.panel and add the classes for that. Then we have another div here. And one more div inside of that. And inside this div here, we want to add a little icon. So we're going to call it, what's the exclamation, or what is it, exclamation triangle. It's going to be the exclamation triangle icon here. So we'll bring that in. And then we can just paste. And then we can just add a couple other styles on top of this. Then below that div, we'll add another div here. Make sure you're closing off all these div tags here. And we're going to add a little title. So that'll be dialog.title here. Go ahead and add this dialog.title. And then below this title, we're just going to have a little bit of paragraph text here in a div. And all this is going to say is, are you sure you want to delete this event? Just like that. And it looks like I missed one div up here, so we'll just add that in, and then we'll close that off with another div right here. Go ahead and save that. All right, and then below this last div, we're gonna come in and let's add the actual buttons to delete. So we'll create another div here with some styles, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say button. And then inside this button, we'll just say delete like this. And then let's add the type, which is going to be equal to button. Let's add some class here. Add some class names for this as well. All right, so we'll add some classes onto that. And then the final thing we want to do is add the actual on click. So let's say on click here. And that is going to be equal to handle delete. Just like that. So this handle delete we haven't created yet, I don't believe. So we'll go and create that in 1 minute, but let's finish this off just so we can see how one of these modals is going to work. So the final thing we want here is going to be another button, and this is going to be a cancel button. And again, the same thing here with the type. It's going to be a button. We'll add some class. And then we'll add an on click here. And this is going to say handle close modal. And that needs to be in braces, of course. So go ahead and add that. Then finally, we can close off our last div right here. All right, so let's finish up. Let's add this handle delete and handle close modal. So if we come back up to the top right here, just go below our last function right here, and we'll say function, and we'll say handle delete. So in here, we're going to use a filter function here. So let's say set all events, and then we're going to pass in all events, and then we're going to go with a dot filter like this. And we're going to filter through the various events right here. And we're going to turn this to a number. This is what we're going to filter by. Make sure that's a number, and then we're going to go event.id. So we're going to filter by the event ID. If it's not equal to a number again, and then we're going to say the ID to delete. All right, so we're going to filter through all the various events if the event ID is not equal to the ID to delete. And then below this, we'll just set a couple things also. So we'll say set show delete modal like that. And that's going to be equal to false. And then we'll say here, we'll go set ID to delete, and we'll set that to null. All right, so that's good for the handle delete. And then below this, we'll do another function, and we'll just have it be handle close modal like that. And then inside this, we'll say set show modal, and that's going to be equal to false. And then we'll say set new event, and we'll just reset all of these properties in here. All right, so that is good. So now I think we should be able to delete an event, but let's give it a go. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll drag an event on here. And if we click on it, now it asks if we want to delete the event. We can cancel it, which will just set this modal to false, or we can come in and hit delete and it's gone. So that works. Let's drag a few others on here and see if that works. You come in, delete them one by one. It's going to filter through and filter out all of these. So that is looking pretty good, I think. That's kind of a nice little modal that you get with this. Nice fade in, nice kind of grayed out transparent background there. Also, if you click outside the modal here on these, it'll close it up for you. So that is looking pretty good. Now we have one other way which we want to create an event is by clicking on a date and bringing up another modal. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, we want to go and create another modal. Now, if you're doing this, you'd probably want to separate these modals into their own components and do it this way, because this is getting pretty, what are we at, 205? Not crazy big, but you probably wouldn't want to do everything in one file. I just think it's a little easier in terms of following along to have everything here. But I would recommend breaking that up if you're doing it in more of a professional setting. So for this, it's going to be so similar. I think I'm just going to copy over and paste in the new modal, and then we'll just explain what we're doing here. So I'm going to go below my other modal here, the transition root, and I'm just going to paste in this, and then we'll walk through exactly what's happening. So this is very similar to our modal above. So instead of the show delete modal, we're just going to say show modal right here, and on close set show modal. Everything else is going to be basically identical to the modal above. All this, we're going to need to bring in this check icon. So let's go ahead and do that. It'll come in automatically when we do that. Now, all that is the same. Add event is the same as like our delete modal basically. Now, the difference here is we are going to have a form. So we're going to form, and it's going to have an action of submit. Now, this is important because the action of submit will mean anything within this that's a button, and we have a type of submit on it like this will submit the form if you hit enter or something. So you don't have to actually click on the button. And that's true for any sort of JavaScript stuff there. So we're going to go ahead and create this handle submit in a minute. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to have an input, which is going to have a type of text there, some styles here, and all that is going to be good. Let's break this up a little bit here so we have a little more room. And we'll just show you exactly what we're working with on here. Let's go one more right here. Added a bunch of styles, got maybe a little overzealous with the styling here. All right, so within this input right now, you can see we have a value, and that's just going to be new event.title. And then we're going to have an on change event. We're going to go and create this handle change, and basically we're just going to be passing in the event right here to this handle change event. That is all we need for that. And then we have this submit button. Just added some styles here. You can go ahead and look on the repo if you want all of these various styles. And then it's going to be disabled if there's nothing inside of the input. That way you can't try to submit an empty input right there. Again, then we just have a handle close modal if you want to cancel for the cancel button. And that is basically all there is to this form. So let's go ahead and actually go and create some of these things. So we need a handle submit and a handle change right now. Let's start with the handle change, I guess. So if we want to come on up to the top right here, we'll just go below right here. And we're just going to say const, and we'll say handle change. And we'll just do like this, and we'll pass in the event. And that's going to be a React dot. This is just going to be the type right here. Change event, just like that. And that's going to be an HTML input element like that. And that's just some TypeScript stuff. I wouldn't worry too much if you're not into the TypeScript. And then it's going to return it's void here. So it's not going to be returning anything out of this. Then from there, little arrow function right here. And inside this arrow function, we're going to set the new event here. And then we can pass in, or spread in rather, the new event. And this is how you're going to set the state on change here. And then we're going to have the title. This is the only property we're changing. That's why you need to spread in the other things. And we're going to say e.target.value. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering about this little blue squiggly, this is just a VS Code extension I have called Total TypeScript. It gives you a little help with the TypeScript and kind of breaks down in kind of simple terms what the particular type is doing there. So just in case you're wondering about that. All right, so that is the handle change. We can actually check that out and see if it's working. And it looks like we might be missing the show modal here. We just went lowercase here in the beginning, so just uppercase that show modal and we should be good to go. Oh, and it's giving us an error because we haven't defined that handle submit, of course. So let's go and do that first. So below this handle change, we can come in here. So we can come in, we can say function. You can see I'm kind of switching up the function syntax and the arrow syntax here. But yeah, you can stick to one or the other probably if you like. I'm just showing you a couple of different ways to do it. So you can say handle submit, and we're going to do a little TypeScript here, but we're passing in the event. Again, React, this is going to be .form event. And then we're going to pass in that HTML form element. And then here we're going to go e.prevent default, which will allow it not to refresh the page when you submit the form. Then we're going to say set all events, and we're going to spread in all events. And the second it's going to be the new event, which we're going to add on. Make sure you get 3 dots here. And then we're going to go set show modal to false. And we're going to set the new event back to its original state. All right, so that is how our handle submit is going to handle things. So now let's go ahead and check this out. Okay, so this is our calendar here. We have our drag events. We know those work. We can come in and click on an event now, and it's going to ask us for a title. So we can say test event like this. And if we go ahead and create that, now we have the test event here. We can go ahead and we can move it around also. That'll change up the date. The other thing you can do is spread it across multiple days here. So that's kind of a nice, cool automatic feature within the calendar like that. Okay, so that is pretty good. Again, we can click on this event here. We can delete it. So you can go and create one, another. We can cancel that. Nothing will happen. Or we can say, and you can see here too, when we add this, if we hit cancel here, it'll clear out the input. So you want to make sure that's happening. We'll just say another test and go ahead and create that. So that's pretty good in terms of the full calendar features that you want to be using. We can actually also come in to the week here and we can drag events on here. This will actually give us a time right now because we're adding that. We can come in, delete that, and we can click on a time here and say test here too. And again, that works there. So that is pretty good. You got your month, your week view. There's other options too. If you want to go and look in the docs, I think a day view, something like that. But yeah, you can go and check those out. Again, we can switch to a different month, come in, different month, and there it is there. And we can drag that around in the month there, just like that, delete it, do all sorts of things there. All right, so I know that was a pretty long tutorial, a lot of typing, ended up pasting a good amount of code also, but remember that'll be in the repo if you just want to copy that over. I didn't want to type all those Tailwind classes and stuff, but I think it helped it look a little bit better. All right, so that is it for this video. If you liked the video, consider subscribing or liking it, and until the next one, thanks for watching.